I'm David Bangsberg, Dean of the OHSU PSU School of Public Health. Can you hear me? No. Good evening. Welcome to Public Health Portland Style, where we put the public in public health. I'm David Bangsberg. I'm Dean of the OHSU PSU School of Public Health. And we're thrilled to have you here tonight, where we are talking about nothing about us without us, peers helping peers for mental health in Oregon. But before we start, there's a couple announcements. The first is you'll see the colored pieces of paper on your tables. Please fill those out and help yourself to a free slice of pizza. If you already had the pizza, you owe us. We're doing our strategic planning, and these are ideas that we're incorporating into our strategic plan. So please put your ideas on paper. We will use them to shape the OHSU PSU School of Public Health. My second announcement is we are very much looking for a sponsor to keep Public Health Portland Style going for next year. This is the last one of this academic year. We plan to start up in September of 2018, but we need a sponsor to help cover the expenses, the sound, the video live streaming, and the cost of the program. So please let us know if you have an idea for a sponsor for this program that builds our community and puts the public in public health. Tonight we have three fabulous speakers. We will lead with Kevin Fitz. Kevin Fitz, I met my first week here in Portland at the Multnomah Club. There was a series of talks on healthcare reform, and Kevin got up and asked the first question, and asked it with such a compelling, thoughtful way. I said, I got to meet this person. And little I know that Kevin is one of the leading mental health advocates in Oregon. He is the executive director at the Oregon Mental Health Consumers Association. Living with disability challenges himself, Kevin directs his energy towards policy behind the state-of-the-art long-term rehabilitation, peer support, peer mentoring, and the role of technology tools for empowering individuals living with disabilities and different abilities. Tonight, Kevin will start off and provide us a brief introduction on the topic and talk about some of his personal experience. Please give it up for Kevin.
Thank you very much. My name is Kevin Fitz. I'm with the Oregon Mental Health Consumer Association. The title of this public health speech is Nothing About Us Without Us, Mental Health Peers and Public Policy and Service Work. I want to give you a little bit of history, but I want to quick tell you some of the, at least as far as we know, the conception, according to Wikipedia, where nothing about us without us may have arisen. So in 1930s, there were Polish union strikers. There's Polish miners' strike, and the union folks said, you corporate bosses and you owners don't make decisions about my job, my wages, without me being at the table. So fast forwards, and we think some of it came out of the 60s as well, but we're not exactly sure, but it came back again really radically on fire in the South African apartheid movement when the Afrikaners were telling the white class, the white owning class and controlling class, don't make decisions about us healthcare, our healthcare and our social services without us at the table at a policy and a decision-making level, because this is just as much our healthcare system as it is yours. So that was the idea of nothing about us without us. In the disability community in America, you may have seen it's sort of a primal handprint, sort of half of our logo, a primal handprint, and it says nothing about us without us, and it's people who live with disability. So the theme about that is don't you Governor, don't you, Oregon Health Authority leader, make decisions about our health care, about our social services, about our housing without us at the table on a commensurate role of making decisions about funding policy and services. So I just wanted to make that point about nothing about us without us. So I want to tell you how I got started as an activist and a mental health consumer person. In 1986, a gentleman went to a national patient conference, came back, learned about the federal government funding 9 pilot projects across the United States, drop-in centers, new sort of novel ideas that would be run by the patient for the patient. So he came back from this conference and applied for a small amount of funding from the federal government. They launched a group called the Mind Empowered Incorporated. So over here in my personal life, my mentor, my alcoholic recovery sponsor, I'm living with him. He's recovering from bipolar and alcoholism, and I'm living with him. Then he serendipitously becomes the executive director of the Mind Empowered. And I'm working in warehouse or doing something. He said, Kevin, you might find this very interesting because you're interested in what happened to you when you had your psychotic episodes. So anyway, he was the first executive director of the Mind Empowered. And the Mind Empowered was a top to bottom mental health consumer run agency. So the psychiatrist, the head clinical director, they all had the experience of severe and persistent mental illness or serious alcoholism or child trauma or something. They came into it as a wounded leader, as a wounded service giver. So that was the Mind Empowered. And the reason why that's important to know, because it shaped the rest of my life, that man who was my personal mentor also took over that agency, and he built a path with people like Dr. Bangsberg and his predecessors to get NIMH at the time to say, we're going to give you a $3 million grant, and we're going to put over here consumer case managers, people who have this disability, and we're going to put over here people who doesn't. And we're going to give you a 4-year grant for the Regional Research Institute of Portland State to study consumers, people who've been there, done that, and then people who are just social workers and counselors. Very fascinating. And that launched us into the next 30 years of consumer empowerment, the state of Oregon funding groups, and various major peer services, consumer services organizations on the rise all throughout Oregon. I just want to say that when I say the peer movement, there's 3 things I want you to think of: civil rights, cognitive liberty, choice in care. We know that one size does not fit all for people in trauma and distress. Secondly, that it's also a workforce, and Dr. Bangsberg and the Oregon Health Policy Board are really looking into. We have shortages. How can we do more social determinants of health, more upstream stuff to keep people out of expensive services? So that's the peer workforce movement that's on fire in Oregon. And thirdly, the last thing I want you to keep in mind is none of this funding happens, we don't get on people's radar without policy and politics intersection, without getting people like Commissioner Sharon Myron to know what our agenda is, what our values are, and that we're serious and earnest consumers. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say for now.
Well said, Kevin. Next, we have Charlie Warner. He's a single father that was struggling until he discovered peer support. Peer support was the answer to his solution on how to achieve his goals and overcome challenges. He's here tonight to talk about his experience and what peer support did for him. Let's give it up for Charlie.
Hello, my name is Charles Warner. I'm originally from Santa Clarita, California. Just a little bit. All right. Although I didn't connect with peer support through mental health services, I did work with peer support for 2 years, and this is my story about the value of peer support across multiple systems. I actually had a happy childhood, and for the most part, I stayed out of trouble and didn't start drinking until I was 21. I personally drank socially with friends and after work. Over the years, I started to drink more, but not to the point where it was causing me too many problems. In 2010, I started having legal issues related to my drinking. I was arrested several times and got in trouble for drunk driving. I got into a relationship with a girl who was using drugs, and many other problems began to grow. In addition to legal problems, I also had experienced many problems in the relationship. We had 2 children together, Alana and Zach. Our problems continued and grew, and in September in 2014, our children were removed by Child Protective Services. This was the hardest thing I've ever been through, and I felt hopeless and alone. I had very little natural support. My father passed away in 2010. My mother had been incapacitated by a massive stroke 2 years prior to my children being removed. When this happened, I actually misunderstood and thought the removal was permanent from the start. I was surprised to learn that I would be given a second chance to get my act together and be in my children's lives. After thinking it over, I realized I wanted to not only be in my children's lives, but to have sole custody of them. This wasn't because I was being mean or vindictive towards their mother. I was simply knew that it was going to be in the best interest of my children, and stop drinking to get myself together. And then I would have to go it alone. Furthermore, I had a deep understanding that I would be in my children's, When I first explained my hopes and dreams to the social worker at the Department of Human Services, I was told that this was never going to happen. She told me that they would be deciding these things for me, and that the best thing I could do was just accept my fate as the non-custodial parent. They told me that I would be lucky to see my children twice a month. I was highly discouraged with the way things were going. I started to feel like there was no hope. They actually told me that if I didn't accept the path that they laid out for me, that I would be considered non-compliant and the court would look down on this. During the time I was highly demoralized as I was living in a friend's car, struggling to find work. In May of 2015, I had a meeting with my caseworker from DHS. She told me that there was someone she wanted me to meet with. She said this person was a recovering drug addict and had himself been previously involved with Child Protective Services and had gotten his daughter back. When I first met this person, who was so-called a peer support specialist, we talked about what I had been going through and spent some time sharing our experiences with each other. I felt a strong sense of connection in that we had also faced the experiences of losing children to the state. Over that course of the next few weeks, we started to work on a plan for what we could work on together. This was a unique in that he encouraged me to tell him what I wanted to do with my life, rather than telling me what I had to do, which is what I had been used to hearing for a long time. When I told him that my dream was to get my kids back in my full-time care and be a single father, he didn't tell me that wasn't realistic and that I needed to give up on this idea, but instead encouraged me to pursue my goal and strive each day to make it a reality. My peer support specialist and I met regularly and were able to accomplish things together. I was able to find a full-time employment and then find a better job, and still a better one again. I stayed clean and sober, and I worked hard to meet all the requirements of the court and DHS. After a few months of working together, my situation had improved dramatically, and the people at DHS started to notice. Around September 2015, the social worker at DHS told me that I would need to meet with them. They explained that there was a strong possibility that my children would have to go from their mother's care back into foster care, and they were starting to consider the possibility of placing them with me. I continue to work hard every day and meet with my peer support specialist regularly. And during this time, I was able to make many significant achievements. About a month later, my DHS caseworker called me and let me know that my children would have to go back into foster care, but they were willing to try placing them with me. That only roadblock was that I would have to quit my job and go on welfare, as I was working a graveyard shift. I reached out to my peer for help. After speaking with him, I made the decision to quit my job and take my children. The sudden and unexpected return of my children caused a lot of stress and anxiety, but I was fortunate to have someone in my corner who could help me navigate the system and the changes that I would face. stayed on welfare for 10 days. On the 11th day, I started a new full-time job, and I have been gainfully employed ever since. DHS and the court said they were really impressed with my ability to parent my children safely, participate in all required services, and facilitate visitations with their mother while also working full-time. My DHS case was dismissed in December 2015, and I was awarded sole custody of my children in March 2016. They have lived with me since then.
Thank you, Charlie. Janie Gullikson is Executive Director of the Mental Health Association of Oregon. She holds a master's degree in public administration, health administration from PSU, and is certified peer support specialist and peer recovery counselor. Janie is passionate about social justice issues with a focus on mental health and addiction recovery, peer support, homelessness, cultural humility, and advocacy in these areas. Let's give it up for Janie.
Thanks, Dr. Banksberg, and thank you everybody for allowing us to share with you tonight. So as Dr. Banksberg said, I'm Janie Gullikson, Executive Director of the Mental Health Association of Oregon. First and foremost, I'm a person in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't used drugs or alcohol in almost 10 years. And thank you. And I'm a person in long-term recovery from a diagnosis of schizophrenia. We can clap. So, there's always that little awkward moment when you say that as well, but it's okay. Yeah, that's recovery too. So that's great. Let's clap. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the organization I work for. So MHAO, Mental Health Association of Oregon, we're a nonprofit, we're peer run, and we've been around since, in some form or another, since the 1970s. Peer run means over half of our board and all of our staff, or just about 99% of our staff, identify as living in recovery with mental health and/or addiction challenges. As peer support specialists, we believe that individuals we serve are the director of their own paths, and that we walk beside these folks we serve to support them with their goals and dreams, like Charlie's. Peer support isn't just what happens in the treatment setting, but it's about the bulk and the root of people's lives and getting them back. A little bit back about MHAO, skipped ahead, so that's why I have this, brings me back. So MHAO, we offer training, technical assistance, direct peer services, and pretty much if it's having to do with peer support, we're doing it. As you've heard tonight, peer support specialists are folks that have been there, done that. We know what it's like to experience extreme states, be addicted, feel so depressed you can't move, be hospitalized or in jail with your rights taken away, or just simply wanting to feel better and trying to find a way. It never gets old as a peer support specialist to connect with a person so quickly, and in that connection, see hope be born. And so I like to also say, and I didn't make this up, I did borrow it, we are advocates of hope, and we bring hope to individuals and spread it throughout our communities. I'm thrilled on a daily basis to get to do this work, to have the chance to offer someone an opportunity they may have never had before. To hear people say, you mean all that I've been through means something and I can use that to help others and get paid for it? For real? So that's been one of the most rewarding aspects of that. Our vision for the future of peer services is that anyone, from the moment they encounter the behavioral health system, experience a mental health crisis, come back to their community after hospitalization or incarceration, will have access to peer support. To have access to know they do not have to do this on their own and they're not alone. I see the ripple effect of peer support every day. I see the changes in people's lives when we train or hire them to be peer specialists. I see the change in the lives of those we serve. And I see the change in the mindset of our community partners and the systems we work in. We get very excited about the direction peer services are going in, but the reality is not quite as exciting sometimes. There are definite challenges peer services are facing, and I will share some examples only to demonstrate that stigma still runs deep when it comes to people with mental health challenges. There's public leaders who state that while they think peer services are a nice idea, they're not a priority, and they're not willing to dedicate funds to invest in them. There are job descriptions that say the right applicant will have followed their treatment plan, continue on their medications, pay their bills, and keep their home tidy. That's an actual job description for a peer support specialist in an organization. And I don't know of any other job description that has those requirements. It is also about an individual mindset. And I've heard questions asked such as, can people with severe mental illness handle the stress of full-time work? Are they trying to be a cheaper and unlicensed version of clinical professionals? Can people with criminal backgrounds have access to protected health information? Should they? Or they were my client. How can I be on a team with them? I share this not to judge or shame those who feel or have felt this way, but when given the opportunity to discuss and share, to mitigate concerns, it's been amazing to witness minds and thinking change. I would also like to share that some of these same folks can be our biggest champions. We have seen what effective buy-in at the political leadership level looks like. Representative Bill Kennemere endorsed a bill that would have put peer support services into the Medicaid contracts of coordinated care organizations, or CCOs. That means that Medicaid contracts would ensure that anyone walking in the door to receive behavioral health services would have access to those peer services, just like they have access to a therapist, a case manager, or a counselor. In the end, the bill didn't pass, but as peer services gain more champions, I believe that we will see that dream achieved. On a systems level, we have seen leadership fight for peer services to be available in their hospitals where they've never been before. A certain local hospital, which shall remain unnamed but starts with an O, had a champion on the inside that broke through a multitude of barriers and challenges to get a peer program started and get the peer specialists on board. We have seen the impact in this hospital's culture that have changed skeptics into believers. Peer services have become the next best thing to sliced bread or lettuce wraps for those that are gluten-free. We are in Portland after all. Individual champions, such as Clackamas County Peer Delivered Services Coordinator, Allie Linfoot, have used their positions to create a multitude of peer service contracts and programs. Allie has been so determined and successful in her endeavor that if someone wants peer services in Clackamas County, they can get it, and at no cost to them. So in closing, I would like to share that peer services are a vital part of an effective system, well beyond just the mental health system. And on a personal note, I will always carry with me what was born in me, sitting in Coffee Creek Women's Prison in a group setting. Very normal looking group facilitator came in and then held up her mugshot and shared her story. And that was the first time that I'd ever seen anyone identify with where I was and where she had been just a few years before. You couldn't even tell. And I remember in that moment thinking, maybe when I get out, it might be different. So what is the call to action I'm asking for tonight? We need peer service champions, and all it takes to be a champion is to believe in recovery, and that it's not only possible, but probable, given the right services and supports, to believe into the value of the voice of lived experience at the table, and to believe in peer support as a profession. Thank you.
Well said, each one of you. We have a special guest in our audience, Dr. and Commissioner Sharon Myron from Multnomah County, who's been a long-time mental health advocate. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Myron to make a few comments. We have the special public health portal. You can either use this mic or the.
Hello? It's
Yeah. Do you want to use this one?
feel a little weird, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's on.
I think it is on.
Yeah, go for it.
It does it, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah, and
okay.
with-
Hello. Hi. Didn't expect to be doing this. So I'm Sharon Myron, and yes, I am Multnomah County Commissioner for District 1, which is all of the west side of Multnomah County. We're in District 1 right now, and inner southeast out to Chavez. And I am also an ER doctor. I work at Kaiser, and I still work shifts, even as a commissioner, occasionally. And one of the reasons that I ran for Multnomah County Commissioner was because of what I saw working on the front line in the emergency department every day. And in particular, what I saw happening with regard to people in mental health crisis, and what I saw happening with people boarding in the emergency department for days and sometimes weeks and even months. It was inhumane. It is inhumane and barbaric treatment. And I started being an advocate long before I became a commissioner. And I worked to change some of the systems that I worked in, tried to talk to legislators, tried to talk to my county commissioners, and finally got to the point where, well, you know, if I want to impact policy, maybe the place that I should do it is from office. And so I ran. I was elected in 2016, so started last year. So I'm still rather new. And I am bringing the advocacy and passion that I have about mental health care to Multnomah County Commission. So I am working on a deep systems analysis of how mental health care services are being provided throughout and offered throughout Multnomah County, because I thought that I would get to the county and sort of see, okay, I can tweak some systems. I saw people would fall through the cracks, you know, I'd maybe fill in some of those gaps and support people, and recognize we really don't have an overarching system of care. And mental health issues are pervasive, and we need to figure out where we are now so that we can actually make the changes we need, a true sort of mental health systems transformation. There are amazing people doing amazing work, including at the county where there's some amazing programs, but we need it all to work together so we can treat people holistically and in an integrated way, so that we can help people just be their best selves. And what Janie said and what Kevin has said, and it's also really nice to see you, meet you, is so true. That voice of people with lived experience matters. Being a peer makes such a tremendous difference, and we listen. People in office hear you and listen, and it might take a while, but you just need to be there. So we, just as an example, today I sponsored a proclamation at the county celebrating May as Mental Health Month, and yay. And we had people who testified before us with lived experience and told such incredible stories that were so powerful. And that is what's going to really move the dial and raise awareness and bring about the kind of change that we need to see. So thank you for letting me speak into this strange device. And it's great to be here tonight. And if you have any questions or anything regarding what's going on at the county or how you can participate or what the results of this study are, that will be back soon, will be in fairly soon, contact me. I'm just remember Sharon, Multnomah County, or District 1, Multnomah County, or call or email this guy or these guys. And it's great to be here. Thank you.
All right. Give it up for our Kevin, Charlie, Janie, and Sharon. So you all know how this works. You want to speak in closely to the mic. And we'll open it up for discussion. We have an online question? Yes.
Do you want to take it?
Sure.
You need the pillow or the Nerf ball?
I think, yeah, the microphone. So actually, the VA is the largest employer of peer support specialists in the nation, but also locally, there are some other programs. I wonder if I saw a hand out there, a few hands that could probably answer that more specifically. So I would defer to them.
Mhm.
They can speak into the box.
Someone from the VA here?
Hi, my name is Allie Koch, and I work for Folk Time, which is a peer-run organization that provides peer support services, including social programs. And I know that we recently started 2 peer support groups that are specifically for veterans. And so as far as I know, we have a peer support group that meets in Northeast Portland at our Free to Be Me location once a week. And then we also have another veteran peer support group that meets in our Oregon City location. And people can check out our website, www.folktime.org, for more information on those groups and when they meet.
Thank you.
Nice slouch.
My name's Sarah Hobbs, and I have worked within the VA health system. And did they mention what era veteran they are? Because I know there's programs at the Vet Center for Vietnam era veterans. Social Work Department at the VA Medical Center has programs for Iraq, Afghanistan vets that have a lot of peer support in them. So it can be a little specific as to what era they served in as well.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. All right. Next question.
Can I ask
Oh, please,
one of
yeah.
our fellow
Of course.
panelists a question?
Yeah, go for it,
I
Kevin.
need the Nerf ball though.
All right. You ready?
Oh,
Veterans resource.
okay.
All right, you ready?
Hello. Hello. All right. So I work at the VA Community Resource and Referral
okay.
Center downtown Personnel. We usually work with veterans that are at risk of losing their housing or are actively homeless. And we have a peer support there. There's peer supports all over the VA in general. And so just basically you need to get enrolled and then enrolled in the Portland VA and then establish your care there, or some care. It doesn't have to be your primary care. And then you can get connected with a peer support pretty easily.
Great. Thank you, Lucian.
And real quick, anybody that's in Washington, like Vancouver specifically, the Washington Department of Veteran Affairs just started a peer support program this year.
Wow.
Woo.
A lot of information. Go for it.
And I also volunteer at Lines for Life, which answers the Veterans Crisis Line. And they can absolutely help connect you with services if you're confused or you don't know where to start. If you call the National Veterans Crisis Line, you'll get directed to us, and we can help you with resources if you don't know where to go.
Here's the information for the National Veterans Lifeline.
It's a folder that happened to see it. It is the National Suicide
Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, that'll work.
All right, there we go. For our online audience, great. Okay. For sure. Yeah.
And last but not least, these are such great resources. The county, Multnomah County also has a Department of Veterans Services and is another place that you can get connected to all of these great organizations.
I have a question for you, Commissioner Myron. So you talked about HSRI, the Human Services Research Institute, doing an analysis and a study of the system because it's siloed or it doesn't work well holistically the way you kind of want it to. So here's the question. I know that you and your fellow commissioners are currently in either the last few weeks or the last month of the budget session. Is there anything that we might see that's coming out of preliminary research from that group that may be a budget ask for novel or peer services or supported housing coming out of that, that it may be a budget ask for this fiscal year, for this budget process?
That's a great question. And there, it is. And so there are a couple of things that we've started working on already in terms of supportive housing, in particular, the Barber Motel, which is in Southwest. We are working, it's going to be 22, I believe, units of supportive housing, particularly for people who are coming out of, say the Unity Center or Providence, that it will be dedicated to that for that transition. And so that's really exciting. We're looking at different, there is a lot of stuff that's going on in terms of the study itself. There may be some small things that we'll glean from that. There are some themes that have come out, particularly a need for culturally specific mental health services. There's some things that are just right out there that you just see immediately. But one of the important things that will be that has been allocated for this budget so far is money to continue the work. So to actually take action on what's found in this initial study, because we don't want it sitting on a shelf. We don't want it to be just a research study. We want it to be meaningful and have an impact. So the next step, look at next budget season for like some real, hopefully transformational type, or at least some steps in that direction. For this budget season, yeah, we have a couple more weeks in it, and things are kind of bleak for the budget, to be honest. And so it will be looking at how we can do things maybe better and in a different way so that we can do things have more effective systems. There's no magic money coming in to do new additional things. So it'll be interesting. Stay tuned. We are taking those next steps.
Fantastic leadership. Commissioner Myron's also on the Unity Psychiatric Crisis Advisory Board.
Great. All right, Nora.
So I'm just, you mentioned briefly, I guess, culturally specific or competent mental behavioral health accessibility or services. What do you guys offer in terms of peer support for like the refugee population in Portland or the Native American population? Do you guys offer peer support specific for different cultures?
So I can speak to MHAO. We don't have a refugee-specific program. We do and work and still are striving for more diversity to reflect, of course, the folks that we serve. And what we have been able to do is have a diverse enough workforce. Right now, we also started very small with 4 peer specialists, and now we have 15. So I mean, thanks. But we really try to meet the needs of the folks we're serving. And if that is for some cultural specificity, if we're not the only game in town, so we all play well with each other. We cross-refer for those that do. And we have a technical assistance program called PeerLink, funded by SAMHSA to, they have a few focus areas, but one is also to reach out to the Native American communities, and we have Native American folks on staff that work with tribes to create the peer support that is culturally appropriate for their healing practices and what they want. So.
Go, Sarah.
So I have been trying, I work in suicide prevention, but I work at extreme risk of, we're talking people off ledges on 23rd floors of high rises, tops of bridge spans. And I work real closely with Acting Sergeant Jason Jones at the Bureau's Behavioral Health Unit, and with Sergeant Troy King at the Portland Police Bureau's Crisis Negotiation Team. And we are all very discouraged right now because I never hear of when there is a suicide attempt survivor, of which I am one. We don't seem to get brought into these discussions. I have tried to engage people supporting peer support on this issue. I was talking with this lovely lady here. There is so much stigma around suicide. I didn't say word one about my attempt for 8 years and forced myself out to do it when I got involved to get the means reduction barriers up at the Vista Bridge. As I was telling you, Ally, I don't see it as me against you. But can we start having these conversations?
Oh, yeah.
I would love to do peer support for people who are coming into your systems, who are coming out of the hospitals after suicide attempts. We are stigmatized. We don't get brought into this. Please bring us into this, and I will do what I can. And thank you for listening, because literally, I tried to engage somebody recently through an organization that is not represented here tonight. And I said, well, I believe with strong peer support, we are going to see the suicide rate go down. We are still going to need to deal with the issue. And we need to start engaging, working together. We need to start talking about this. The city is at number 28 nationwide. The state is number 13 for suicide. We need to start dealing with this. Thank you.
Well said, Sarah. Thank you. Want to respond to suicide?
Yes.
Please.
I mean, I just say yes to that. Yeah. We do need to start talking about it and offering peer support specific for survivors of suicide attempts, for sure.
Can I add
Please, yeah, of course. Yeah.
One of the key issues around this whole thing, whether you're in recovery from addictions or mental health issues or a suicide survivor, is the idea of positive visibility. Roughly, this is just sort of a rough shot, but in the state of Oregon in 2016, 175,000 to 200,000 Oregonians received public mental health and addiction services. That's an incredible amount of people. The challenge that we as leaders and activists are trying to find is how do we get more people to, like this young woman in the green, in the pink, purple, orange shirt.
Sarah.
Yes. Anyway, the stage lights are making it kind of hard to see, but the woman in the colored t-shirt and the bright pastel t-shirt. Anyway, so the issue is there's 200,000 consumers, peers, people who have had the experience of it, and how many suicide survivors, but how do we get a crowd? I mean, it's great to get people who are articulate and leaders and program managers and a few of us, but we need to make a crowd so we get people like the legislature, the politicians to say, hey, take us serious. We're, like remember the AIDS movement? We're here, get used to, we're here, we're queer, get used to it. And they act up, did some amazing things to get, like Greenpeace. So we in the consumer peer movement need to up our game, getting the attention of other folks like Commissioner Myron and Professor Bangsberg to say, we are consequential in trying to save lives, save tax dollars, and save people from being another suicide statistic. Is that?
Well said. I agree.
That's why we put the public and public health at the OHSU PSU School of Public Health.
To follow up a little bit, so when you talk, there is strength in numbers, and that's why the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has our Portland Out of the Darkness Walk the first Saturday of October. And we always say strength in numbers, and we have on average 2,200 people. And we don't expect you to have to pay or fundraise for just what Kevin is saying. We need the awareness. So consider yourself all invited first Saturday of October. Love to see you. I agree with what you're saying, but there is so much stigma around the issue of suicide. I know I and the people I work with are very discouraged right now. And I think if it's going to take some strong partnerships with the school, with organizations, Kevin, like yours, Janie's, and we'll get it done. And I meant to say to the gentleman in the middle, I don't think single fathers get enough credit for what they do, and I want to applaud you.
Low five.
Charlie, you want to respond to that?
Thank you very much. It is difficult being a single father. There's a lot of struggles in it, and just alone being a single parent. So to all the single parents out there, I want to give you a high five, and you guys are doing a great job.
Well, again, so you had a question about Native Americans in peer support. NARA is a big advocate for, they're a Native American organization. So we actually had a representative from NARA and come to our clinic, and he spoke about, he was the Veterans Outreach Coordinator. So even they're even reaching out farther is like to specific populations like veterans who are kind of, Native veterans are underserved traditionally and throughout all of history. So that's I just wanted to say that. So NARA is good. And then also I had a question about peer support training. Like the OHA website isn't great as far as finding if someone, like myself or someone else in here that wants to become a peer support. And so do you have any insight on that, especially for working people as well?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So two of the biggest players in town on that front are here, Folk Time and MHAO. We each have state-approved peer support specialists. They have intentional peer support, which I know for all of my staff, if they come through, no matter what training they've had, even if it's one of ours, I still have them go through IPS. It's the core foundation of peer support. We have peer wellness specialists, which incorporates the physical health aspect, co-occurring mental health and addictions, peer employment specialists, and youth and young adult peer mentor specialist training. And those two could speak more about the other training offered by Folk Time if you're interested.
There's two of us that are both in Pendleton, I think.
Shout out to Pendleton in the house.
And
I
we
just-
have a flyer over there also. So.
I want to respond to the Oregon Health Authority question. For those of you who are taking notes, Monday afternoon at the state capitol at 2:30, the Oregon House of Representatives Health Committee is having the OHA report for legislative days. And on that is behavioral health initiatives activities. So the OHA is going to be talking to Commissioner Myron's counterparts in the state legislature about what we need to do and what our priorities in behavioral health in the interim part of session. So if you want to tune in, you can actually, like this is being live streamed to all our friends and family on Facebook, the same thing. This is live streamed from the Oregon State Capitol at 2:30 on Monday. Their overall Oregon Health Authority is going to be talking about the rest of their systems. And this is something that we all tried to do to talk about. Over here, you have peer services certification. Over here, you have peers and policy. Over here, you have the groups that reach out to Health Share and All Care. We need to get OHA to do a better job of bringing synergy to these, holistically communication so the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. So that's one thing that you can do that we can, another call to action is look this up and follow the Oregon Health Authority budget. Professor Bangberg can tell you it's $20 billion, $30 billion a year are spent on Medicaid and Oregon Health Plan services in Oregon. So it's an amazingly huge part of the state, what the state of Oregon does. And we need everybody, all hands on board, as they say in sailing, I think. Do they say that?
On deck, yeah.
On deck.
Yeah. Other questions?
A volleyball tournament. Just a comment, or I guess a question for you. Don't you have honorary crutches for speakers who break a leg?
We get up on stage and we do our best. We wish everyone a break. Thank you for the kind words.
I just want to add a shout out to these two and their leadership. These folks are role models for we want their compatriots to move to.
Yes.
And it's amazing that Professor Bangsberg approached us last summer and talked about getting us into the queue. And I think, like Saturday Night Live has the last session of the year, we're closing out this year's session with peer support.
Yeah.
So.
I think just to build on your comment, the purpose of Public Health Portland Style is to take difficult issues that aren't discussed in academia and in the public and with advocates, with implementers, with policymakers all in the same room. And we've talked about racism, we've talked about homelessness, we've talked about healthcare reform, we've talked about intellectual disability and sexual assault and gun violence. And so we want to create a safe space to have really tough discussions. And that's our goal here tonight. And I think we are achieving that. Thank you all for your help. Next question. Dr. Messer. Well, we will relay. Adam, you do the. Go.
They recognized a rookie at catching when they saw one. So I would love to walk out of this session today with concrete steps. What I heard was be an advocate for peers, support peers, appreciate peers, recognize the value of peers. This is I am somebody who votes with my pocketbook and I vote with my vote. So I need to know what concrete steps I can take to advocate for these programs that I believe are helpful and how I can be an ally in this.
That's an excellent question. I'll give a couple of things just from the kind of political standpoint, and then these guys I can give you some concrete answers of involvement as well. So politically, we're very fortunate in Oregon. It's a small state, and our legislators, our county people, whoever it is, even our federal delegation, congressional delegation, are really accessible, and they actually listen. Like if you send a letter, and I would do a real letter. I mean, you can do an email too, but you can just easily look up who your state legislator is, your state senator, your state rep. Send them a letter and say, I'm a constituent. Peer services are extremely important to me. That would be one thing to do. Also, us at the county too, you're going through your budget. Peer support services are extremely important to me, or peer services. And come, like at local government, come just testify. We have board meetings for the Multnomah County every Thursday at 9:30 in the morning. And we have public testimony Kevin's there pretty, not infrequently. And it's great. You have 3 minutes to just talk about whatever is important to you. And there's 5 of us and we are local and we listen. So those are some of the things that you can do, get your friends together to do the same thing. And there is real power in that. So I would urge all of you to do that.
And there are ways to get connected to the movement also. There's PeerLink listservs, so there's some resources that I can show you over there to get connected to that listserv. It's PeerLink with a C, and there are all kinds of information, discussion, advocacy opportunities, political and legislative updates, some very rich discussions. Get to know the local providers. I know time is valuable, but also if there are boards or committees or advisory councils that you are drawn to or have time to be on, or if you find yourself at a table where decisions are being made and the voice of lived experience is not there, even asking, where is that lived experience voice?
Got it? Ready? Oh, a little short.
Does OHSU or PSU offer peer support training? And if not, why not?
So I can speak to that.
Okay. Now, that's a great question. Yeah,
Portland State for the last 3 years have been participating with Cascadia Behavioral Health Services. So at the Regional Research Institute at Portland State, for 8 months, they do a peer wellness part 1 and peer wellness part 2. So ours was every Friday afternoon at the Regional Research Institute, run by a Cascadia peer manager, but also as a Portland State class that you could also take. And so they've been doing that for, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years. And that helps educate the folks who are in Cascadia system, but some of those PWS and peer support folks have gone to work for Janie's organization or for Folk Time or Project Able or some of the larger peer consumer-run organizations around the state. So yes, they do that. You can't get a master's degree in peer services, policy yet or stuff like that, but we're gonna, move them on. I have a very good partner that also works at the university, so we're trying to figure out how to get them to, ideally, and I say it a lot, ideally we want, some people think I'm joking, I want the system to take a look at how are these people saving money? How are they saving money in Clackamas County when peer services got rolled out? They saw in criminal incarceration, hotline use, psychiatric crisis like Unity, bed reduced, these people who got peer services. And before you become a man or a woman with your head on fire, peers can help you maintain, chill out, be a community, a friend, an accepting sort of listener before, you go into full-blown crisis. And it's an amazing way to save money and promote friendships. Like we're friends, but we're also in the movement together. And so it's just a great way to help promote acceptance.
And to answer your question, OHSU, PSU School of Public Health does not yet have a program. We have talked about a program, or think about a program of community health worker training. And we think that's a really important area that was very tightly related to peer support. Thank you for your question. Yes, sir.
If the peer training at PSU is not run through the PSU OHSU School of Public Health, who at PSU is running it?
So she's an adjunct teacher and educator at Portland State at OHSU. Her name is Megan Kahi. She's not a tenured professor and doesn't run a department like Dr. Bangsberg does, but she is a teacher and an educator that teaches part-time at Portland State as a instructor of peer services. It's under the domain of RRI, Regional Research Institute. You can find, they can help you direct it to. But I also want to say there's lots of other groups, Chemeketa Community College, Janie's organization, Folk Time, Project Able, NAMI are all trying to help educate the peer workforce and lift them up and get them more engaged.
So, all right, that would be the school of social work.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So PCC also has like a CRM class or something, like one term or whatever.
What's a CRM, Craig?
Certified Recovery Mentor.
Yeah.
So, do I need to explain that more?
What's
Okay,
Certified
Certified
Recovery
Recovery Mentor. So basically, it's somebody with lived experience with addictions, with an addictions background, getting trained as a peer support.
Bambo.
Thank you.
What day is the NAMI walk?
All right.
Sunday.
Anything else? All right, well, yeah, we got
Just something really quick. There is an event on Sunday, which is awesome. Yes, it is the NAMI Walk, and it is just a group that gets together. I don't know how many years.
Last year they had almost 10,000 walkers.
I know, yeah, it's been exponentially growing. We meet at noon. There's all sorts of booths, and it's a very celebratory atmosphere, and lots of stuff going on. Meet at noon at the base of the Hawthorne Bridge, the East Esplanade, and the walk starts at 1, and it's just a great walk. You walk down the Esplanade, cross the Morrison Bridge, cross the Steel Bridge. There are others who should speak to this, but Steel Bridge, make your way back, come back over the Hawthorne Bridge. It's a great walk. It's a great experience, a great way to show support and solidarity and experience some wonderful community. I will be there, and it would be great to have as many people there as possible.
All right, let's give it up for Janie, Charlie, Kevin, and Sharon. A small thank you.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is great.
And we hope to see you in September for a Public Health Portland style. We know we will find someone to help keep us able to put the public in public health. Thank you everyone for coming, our online audience, everyone in the room. We really appreciate you being here and participating, as well as our speakers. Thank you, everyone. Oh, yeah, 47, yeah.